All right, so we will call the council meeting to order. Everybody stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the
republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, take the roll.
Mayor O'Connor,
Here.
Morissette,
Here.
Alms,
Here.
Knutson, here, Kennedy,
Here.
Ruck,
Here.
Hall.
Here.
All right, so everybody, let's see, first thing up is comments from citizens present. This is your opportunity to make comments about anything that is not on the agenda that pertains to issues before or coming up with the city. Please be brief. Try not to repeat what other people have said, and identify yourself. We take comments from residents only. And having said that, do we have anybody on Zoom, Aaron?
No, that's not an option.
Oh, that's right. I apologize. Sorry about that. Okay. All right. Is there anybody?
Yes, we have one in the room,
Okay.
or at least one. Two.
All right. Identify yourself, please, and make a comment.
Good afternoon, City Council members and Mayor. My name is Jeannie Castro. I reside at 1806 Willow Drive in Hudson, and I have been a member of this community for 27 years. And also, I have been a volunteer on the Tour of Christmas Homes for 24 years. So the Tour of Christmas Homes is so brought on by like the charm of Hudson. It's Rivertown community, and what I'm here to talk about tonight is preserving that community, that beautiful, picturesque Rivertown community with our quaint buildings and just the community of people that surrounds that. So what I'm proposing is that we set guidelines, and strict guidelines, because I know we have had guidelines in the past, to preserve our downtown in its like early 1900s period looking buildings, and to preserve that, especially as we're going forward in these times where big community developers are coming in and proposing big buildings that may tower over our small downtown look and also impede on people's views. Like, for example, the sisters that were here last week, last meeting, that live up on Laurel, they have historically had that home since it was an insane asylum, like years and years ago. And it would, like the building that they're proposing at the bank, if that exceeds a certain amount of floors or stories, it would impede their view and also the view at Prospect Park. So I'm asking us to be respectful and put in, create a mission statement we can get citizens we can get surveys to see what our community is really looking for in advancing our town. And I know that parking is an issue, but I don't think it's an issue at the expense of tearing down buildings and historical landmarks. I would also like to create the idea of putting together like rooftop gardens or something that could preserve, possibly buildings like the firehouse, because that is a historical building that has so much quality and people have experienced pancake breakfast there. I mean, there's a lot of feelings and memories that come with that facility. I know that there was some public interest in preserving that, and the idea of having a public forum came up on last week's agenda, and it was endorsed by at least 2 of the council members and then shut down. And I would like to reintroduce that idea of a public forum, and also having surveys done with our community, possibly creating a subcommittee board to come up with ideas or guidelines or do surveys to do outreach so that the community really knows what's going on in the city planning, because I think it's important. And I think that that's why I've stayed here for 27 years, is because of that community. And I know a lot of people go and move somewhere else and come back because of Hudson's charm. So I think that is our number one thing about Hudson is that. So in the next couple of months, I would like to really recommend that we do that. It's in the back of my notes. That we create a mission, stand firm on our guidelines, and as people come in and propose projects, we have already in place what we want and expect out of the project as far as building size and look, and we stick by it. I also propose that we take another look at the firehouse and how we can make that be a building that doesn't create more runoff by tearing down that facility, which could potentially put asbestos in the air. But if it's contained or restored in a way that would not introduce that into the air. I also work with a person who does rooftop gardens that would do a proposal. So I would like to look at that in addition to that, how we can preserve that property in a way that would not create runoff for the river, and also help our community to have like another, point of meeting or a really great retail place that would bring more tourism to downtown. All right, thank you very much, and I think there's someone else who wants to say something.
My name is William McManus. I live at 802 9th Street in Hudson. I'm a 18-year resident of Hudson. I was actually born in Hudson. I know you get a lot of people come and they sort of excoriate you and complain and stuff like that. But the first thing I want to do is just say how delighted I am to live in Hudson. And I think that particularly the city services like the street clearing in the winter and the plowing and the police and the fire service is just absolutely exemplary. I think it's fantastically good. And I've never had a bad interaction with either the fire department or the police. I just think they're doing a great job. So, and thank you all very much for serving in your own capacities. And I want to thank the mayor for having been tremendously helpful on various small snow removal problems I've had over the years. Okay, so now on to my main point, which I won't belabor too long. 9th Street has turned into a sort of practice freeway. And over the summer, there was cones put out in several locations, which helped a lot, but some young hardies would come by at midnight and throw them into people's yards or move them around or rearrange them or take them away and stuff like that. So they did sort of help when they were in place. They slowed people down a bit. It was good. But as soon as they were taken away or moved, we went back to the practice freeway status of 50, 60 miles an hour in the residential area of Hudson, which in my opinion is not acceptable. So we got some bolted down bollards or whatever, no, I'm not sure what they're called. And I participated in, by the way, I participated in a couple planning meetings. Somebody was very kind and allowed me to sort of sit in on some planning meetings a year or two ago. And there was discussions about what to do about this. Because I think 9th Street in particular going north seems to lend itself to sort of, joyriding or something. I don't know what the story is really. But there's children everywhere. There's children in the winter and there's children in the summer. There's children. We got one daughter who's 10. There's 3 kids living across the street in the fourplex. There's kids all up and down that street. And I just think we have to do a little better here. So the city came and they put these bolted down things that I imagine will have to be taken up when plowing starts. But they're not making a bit of difference. They're 3 or 4 blocks north of Vine, which is ample time to get up to speed in your whatever kind of car you're driving. And we routinely have people, I don't know, there's some good people driving responsibly, but we routinely have people of all ages just seeing how fast they can get by the time they get to Fox Street, which is where our corner, Fox and 9th. And they're going 50, 60 miles an hour, friends. And I just don't think it's acceptable. Now, my suggestion 17 years ago, and my suggestion about 2 weeks ago to the mayor in an email, and to the I think the public works person, was that you absolutely must have some stop signs. You've got to put a stop sign, you've got to put two-way stops in a couple places on 9th Street, or you're never going to slow this down. There's a two-way stop, just for your information, that you may or may not be aware of. There's a two-way stop on 10th Street at 10th and Pitt. I think it's a 2-block road. It goes nowhere. There's a two-way stop there. I don't know what kind of accident of history that is. But friends and neighbors, we got to control this speed on this street. And I'm sure there's other places in the city as well where, I understand there's some kind of state mandate about using stop signs to control traffic speed or something like that. Listen, use your power. Let's go. Let's get some stop signs in there, and let's keep the people of this town, and particularly the children, let's keep them safe. That's my plea to you this evening. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, William. Any other comments?
Yep, we got one more coming.
My name is Jillian Newis-Opatz. I live at 1620 Stone Pine Court. I own a few buildings in downtown Hudson. One of the concerns that I'm starting to see are these bigger buildings coming in. It kind of correlates with the taxes going up and how that's affecting our small businesses downtown. One of the things that I love about our downtown is that it's more of our locally owned businesses, the smaller businesses. They're not backed by corporations. So I would like to keep that atmosphere as much as possible downtown, just for the sake of these businesses that are already working super hard. I mean, we just went through COVID, and we just went through this downtown gorgeous street now, obviously, but it did put an impact on those businesses. And when we see these properties coming in at the higher rates, the $1 million condos, we're seeing those taxes go up. And as good and great as it is for our town to have those taxes to put towards the roads and put towards our community, it is impacting our businesses downtown. So I just want to open that up as more of a comment than anything, and a concern that I have as a business owner downtown. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any other comments? Any other comments? Any other comments? Hearing none, we'll close that portion of the agenda. Next up is the consent agenda.
Approve the meeting minutes from July 18, 2022 regular council meeting. Approve the claims in the amount of $2,375,555.92. And approve the memorial application submitted by Krista Bozer.
Would you please pull that one?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda with the exception of item C. Roll call.
Morissette?
Yes.
Alms?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
Kennedy?
Yes.
Brooke?
Yes.
Hall?
Yes.
Motion's approved. Item C,
I asked that to be pulled. I got a call because somebody was concerned about the process that this went through and wanted to make sure that the wishes of the grieving family had been properly dealt with. And so, unfortunately, Mike Mraz isn't here, but maybe, Mike, can you address the process that the park board went through?
Yeah, I guess in a kind of a big picture, I know that Mike Mraz has worked on putting together an inventory of kind of what memorials and also just what trees, benches, things like that, and trying to put together a plan, or did put together a plan that covers this. So if a family wants to do a memorial, Hudson, through the park board, I think it starts with, there is an application that you can see that she filled out on this particular one. And there's basically like a list of items, a bench, trees, there may be a few other things. And ultimately, it's sort of the Mike Mraz kind of has the final stamp of it. We don't want to put a tree where we're going to be, moving it in a week or two, or we don't want 17 benches on the same spot. So generally, when it comes to the park board, we approve and then kind of put that ball in his court to kind of work with the family and say, a bench would be nice, and here's a few places for it. So that's kind of how my understanding of how this works. So we do have a fairly rigorous checklist and form to fill out. So it's not kind of created as it used to be, I think. So.
Yeah, I think about a year or so ago, we did update it. We had approved a new policy for how to do these. So as far as, this went, it followed that policy, but I think what you're saying is that the family might be opposed to it, or
No, it wasn't
if we're
the
missing
family. It was
some-
just somebody else here in the city who expressed concern about whether the family's wishes had been taken into account and properly, and making sure that, that it wasn't just done too quickly so that they had the time to process things like that.
And that is detailed in Mike's issue sheet, that her desired location was south of Walnut Street.
Right.
But the park board is recommending a location, and there's a map and a drawing or a photo further down the walking path, like towards where the rowing club, those buildings
Yeah.
down there, I guess, what are they calling that? The
Yeah.
paddling instruments or something, paddle sports. So it seemed like it's a change. Is that what you're saying, Joyce?
Right, yes. That was the concern that the citizen had made.
Right.
Was,
I have not heard any concern, I guess, from the family that they're not happy with this location. It's like Mike said, our policy, what we tried to get away from was, in the past, we were running into the issue where people wanted to put various memorials up at certain spots. And they didn't always work well for various reasons, but we were allowing them, and it was causing problems later. And I think what we recognize is it's always a lot worse to allow something to go in than move it a year or two later, instead of making sure we can put it in a spot that we know that it can be there for a while. So I guess in this situation, I have not heard that the family has an issue with it. Now, if they do, we'd be happy to pull it and revisit it. But I don't think that the exact location was acceptable, because we were worried about that very issue where, yes, it may be okay today, but when we have to remove it, tomorrow, that's even worse. And so we try to put it in a place where we know it can stay. So I guess what I would say is that if we've heard from the family that they have a concern with it, we'd be happy to put a hold on it until then. But otherwise, as far as we know, that I haven't heard that. So I think it's okay from their point of view. But if we have concerns, it's fine if we want to reach out and verify it again with them. But I have not heard that there was any.
okay.
Well, I have to apologize because I don't know all the details of that policy, and I know it was voted on recently. In the past, people were just selecting a spot, or it was, we just decided to make it more structured.
There was no
Approach to it.
oversight.
Pardon me?
There was no oversight
oversight
at the
for-
time.
yeah.
It was just being placed by the Parks Department,
Okay.
and no one
Sure.
knew anything.
Okay.
Yep, so we detail it, we have a pretty detailed policy about the process to follow. Yep.
And that policy doesn't give the impression that they can choose wherever they want?
No, basically what it says is if you have a desired location, you can submit it, and then the Parks Department, the city basically will work with you to identify as close of a location as possible that, like I said, is going to be a long-term solution.
I think one of the questions too is the communication back to them since submitting. Like, is somebody from Parks reaching out to that person if they wanted a spot, right?
Yeah, I think Mike Mraz is the point person for that.
Right.
Yep, so I don't know that answer. I
It
guess I'm
says
not
staff checked with applicant.
Yeah.
It does say, that's his closing
You
sentence there.
know, so yeah, I mean, like I said, as far as I know, they
Right.
work with them, and then they don't bring it to Park Board until they have the okay. So as far as I know, it was good.
Sure.
Unless something has changed.
Well, it is a sensitive thing, and I did speak with someone also in the community. People, have lost loved ones, are thinking about how to remember them and make a mark in the city. And one thing that I was concerned or surprised to see was a comment about we're going to revisit the memorial in 10 years and possibly remove it. That kind of surprised me, but again, I know that's not today's topic, so sorry.
Right.
Bring that up. Sorry.
And like you,
All right,
Joy,
we have a motion?
Go ahead.
I was just going to say I heard from someone too, and just wanting to make sure that we were sensitive and how it was approached when people are grieving, moving, doing something different than what was requested. I understand that sometimes it won't work where they're hopeful, but just wanting to make sure that we are treating people with the utmost care and caution as they're grieving.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. I'll make the motion to approve this, and with the, how to put it is that if we hear from the applicant, before it's installed, that it gets brought back to council.
I'll second that.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I wanted to clarify, are you saying back to council or back to Park Board?
Oh, I suppose it should go back to Park Board.
Board.
Okay, I will change my, my motion that if the applicant has concerns about the spot, that it'll go back to the Park Board.
And I can second that friendly amendment.
Okay. So, any further discussion?
Just respectfully, this is the reason why we should have probably never gone down this road as a precedent. We're gonna end up doing this again. So,
Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion and possible action on code of ethics.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor and fellow council members, for allowing us to revisit this topic from our May 2nd meeting, where we had attorney Geraldine Jacobs, who made recommendations on our existing code of ethics policy. And it was mentioned that evening that we would probably revisit this and have some discussion on it. And that is why I asked it to be brought forward, not only from that meeting, but I have heard from community members that they would like to see additional clarity on this. And so I'm wondering, I do have a motion set and ready to go. Should I do the motion and go from there, or would we like to have some discussion first? And I appreciate the directions.
well, I think there's gotta be a lot more discussion. I think Aaron has some new information brought to the table about
Oh.
what changes are, or what we're looking at possibly tweaking
Sure.
on the code,
Okay, that's,
before we just jump right in, I would assume,
Okay.
right?
Well, I mean, I think we all had the copy of the memo.
Yeah.
So, the memo basically had, I think, so 1, 2, 3 sections where the attorney discusses some changes. And mostly it's changing from, one section is changing from should to shall. Well, in 2 sections, it's basically changing a word from should to shall. They talk about changing and making it clear that the the meetings are open to the public unless there's an exemption under state law, which would allow them to be closed. There's that. And then also the final one was that complaints can be accepted in a form different than what we have. So you can basically file a sworn complaint on any form you want to. It doesn't have to specifically be the form that we have attached to it. So those were the items that were the ones that were
The add-on.
basically it's kind of just some detailed changes that would clarify things and stuff like that. And then the other obviously ones that were more policy driven was the discussion of forming a standalone ethics committee to review the complaints.
And Aaron, so I watched that May 2nd meeting again to get those details as well. And perhaps I didn't, maybe you said this and I missed this, but under violations and penalties, she did also recommend to include up to some censure, or including censure, possible censure.
Well, I mean, that's an allowable action, but we don't really talk about penalties really in the policy necessarily. So it was just more clear. I think that was just more clarifying, saying that so the council realizes basically, censure is really the main option and that sort of thing. So I'm not sure about actually adding anything with that one.
All right. So I would like us to have some conversation on what people are thinking, and I know that 4 of us, actually 5 of us elected officials were there when we went through the past code of ethics claims, and I know that 2 were able to watch that unfold and would be open to hearing discussion and opinion from others.
Well, I'd like to say that I believe that we do need to update this so that it's evenly applied and appropriately applied. And so I would like to see it get updated.
I like the updates that was suggested, except for I don't think we need another committee to deal with this stuff. This should be the last tool in anybody's toolbox of thinking why we need to do this. I think what the lawyer said about it and what we need to do about what we have on the books is to tweak it just a little bit to make it a little more uniform or whatnot. And
Make sure that it's evenly applied.
Yeah, for sure. It should, as always, it should be, in anything we do.
Something that's missing in our code of ethics is anything about campaign contributions. Do we need to talk about that, whether, people who are vendors for the city, should they be excluded from being able to make campaign contributions because of the conflict of interest?
Well, wouldn't the state address that? The elections committees have those statutes set in place to address campaign issues.
Yes, I would agree. That is addressed there. You could be more strict on a local level if you feel that would be necessary, but.
What is the state, can you look that up or can
Well,
somebody look
what
that
I
up
would
and-
say is that, you have to file campaign finance reports with the state, all those sort of things. So there's nothing everything has to be publicly disclosed.
Right.
And the state has a statute that handles donations for campaigns and things at the municipal level. So I don't know that we would necessarily want to do anything more than that, than what's already currently in state statute.
Okay, well, I guess I would like to know how it addresses conflicts of interest when it comes to campaign contributions.
Geraldine Jacobs did mention that a best practice is an independent board, and that what can happen is if you have to have lots of recusals, you might not have enough people to really weigh in, and I think we did see that happen. And so while it is certainly my hope that this would never come again, I just want to make sure that should it ever come again, that whoever is sitting here has a very clear understanding and the support that they need to make good informed decisions. And an independent board would not make the decision, but would merely make a recommendation, which she mentioned was considered a best practice. And I'm wondering if we could perhaps get our council's opinion on that as well.
Well, I'm happy to provide it. As you know, most of you saw recently, you had the opportunity to go through the process with your structure. So you've had the opportunity to see how your current structure plays out. Now, there are a lot of communities that never have to utilize the services of their ethics committee, and we would hope, as Councilwoman said, that we won't have to in the future utilize the services of that particular committee. But the question is, how do you want it to work? You've seen how it works in action. The Finance Committee sitting as the ethics committee. You know, there was a suggestion that we don't need another committee. The question is, what do you want the committee to do? How do you want it to function? How do you want it to get actionable information, actionable recommendations to this body? Ultimately, you're the final decision maker, the final decision maker relative to any discipline or any action on an ethics complaint that might come through. And certainly we would hope that ethics complaints would only be filed based on material violations of the code. But the question is really one of policy. Do you feel that the Finance Committee, serving as the Ethics Committee, is able to do its job in reasonably providing recommendations for your action? Or do you believe that it would make more sense to have either a combination of elected officials and appointed officials, appointees, making those recommendations? Or do you believe that there should be a committee that's not made up of any elected officials but is wholly appointed? That's really the policy decision for this council to make. Do you leave those decisions and that process to the Finance Committee serving as the Ethics Committee? Or do you shift that responsibility to a different structure, a different committee that has a different makeup other than your Finance Committee?
I'd like to comment on that. While, as we've commented, there were some painful circumstances of dealing with complaints within this body. But I think it's just as likely that if we do have an ethics complaint come in the future, it could be regarding an employee, could be an appointive official that is charged with something. And I just have a lot of confidence in the people that were elected to serve and are sitting here today. And I just have a little concern that that sort of issue, of course, most employee issues would be handled personnel-wise with the HR department. Hats off to Aaron Reeves. But it's possible that it could advance to the point of coming as an ethics issue, and I feel better about that being the elected officials sitting on that. So I am not leaning towards having a separate committee for that reason.
A lot of it comes down.
I'd like to add here, obviously it's an unfortunate situation whenever we have an ethics complaint filed against any member of our council, filed against any of our staff. But I think the process worked. I don't understand why we're always looking for solutions to problems that have not really been explained. And that's what we're doing here. We're looking at a situation where we had to deal with the ethics committee. I don't think anybody pointed out, and I don't think anybody was able to explain that it's broken, that it didn't work. I think, in fact, it did work. And we saw how it worked. And so, again, I don't understand why we're looking for a solution to a problem that, in my opinion anyway, doesn't exist. And I think, that every now and then is a tendency of elected bodies where they're always looking for solutions to problems that don't exist. I think we worked our way through it. I think that there were some other suggestions made by the council to tweak our current ethics system the way we have it set up. To improve it a little bit, and I think we ought to be considering those.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the concerns I've heard from community members that have elected and put us here there was concerns about impartiality. There was a perception that having peers make the final decision on when you knew that there had been some tension, that keeping things impartial was very challenging. That is the feedback I've heard from community members, and that is why I personally have brought it forward. And I respect what Geraldine Jacobs has recommended, and she is an expert in the area, and I certainly understand. Sounds like there's a different opinion here, so perhaps it's time that we call the question, perhaps.
I have,
All right, we have a motion to call the question. Is there a second?
What's a motion?
There's no motion yet.
Yeah, there's no, I'm just wondering if we're at that point, but it sounded like my council member Hall had some additional comments.
as the subject of the ethics complaint, it was very uncomfortable having my colleagues scrutinizing things. I think that it would be better, I mean, okay, first of all, I hope that we never have to go through this again. But there's a good possibility that 10 years, 20 years down the road, the city may go through this again. And of course, there won't be anybody that's here right now. Maybe Randy will still be there. But anyway, you know, so if none of us are here to talk about the learnings that were that we had from this process, let's make sure that the process is good. First of all, it was unevenly applied. I went through a lot, and then the second complaint was just dismissed completely without even being looked at or investigated. And one of the things that was said was that, well, there really isn't a process for bringing in a complaint after I had gone through the process. So I think that this does need to be addressed to make sure that, yes, we do have a complete process, that it's all laid out in the ethics policy, and that it gets addressed. I do think that an independent committee would be a good idea. We don't have to. We don't have to have somebody, a group that's always on standby for this. We could designate that the committee would be made up of certain people who, in certain designated spots. So for example, the chair of a certain committee or something along that line, so that we wouldn't have to approve a committee. We'll have these people on standby when they're probably not going to be doing anything anyway. That's making work that we don't need to do. But having it set up where, all right, the committee will be made up of the chair of a certain committee, the, a certain council member, or if that's what we want. But I agree that, we should be looking at what the attorney says is best practices.
I'd like, Joyce, and you and I have, and Aaron and Nick and the mayor and I, we worked through the process as well. Court of public opinion, whatever you want to call it, we went through the process too. Mm-hmm. It was not fun.
No, it wasn't.
Nobody's position that wanted to be in. I said it many times over, I didn't want to deal with it for you either. We're colleagues. To me, I think our relationship has grown and communicating a lot better. Mm-hmm. And that's was the most important thing to get out of that, not the he, she calling of names and stuff. We're colleagues, we're adults. We should be able to rectify and settle our differences here. And I promised that back then that I would do a better job to be able to do that. That's why I talked with you afterwards at a couple different meetings to iron our differences out. We're not here to bash each other. We're here to move the city forward on a collective majority of opinions, right or wrong. The majority wins when we vote. and that's how it goes. We're not here to bash each other. We're working as colleagues, and I need to act like that.
Well, and, yeah, and we are, we have the final say anyway. But she does make a good point that if we've got, how do we handle things if many of us need to be recused?
It's been a longstanding tradition that we don't bind other other future councils ahead of us. So what's in front of us is, I think, a good tweak to what we need to make adjustments to our policy. And I would move in favor of that with Aaron's additions into the policy, minus another committee. I think we're adult enough to make these decisions and go through a process to make sure we're doing the overall good for the city and make those decisions one-on-one, as the six of us are the elected representatives. I just feel strong that it's us that moves this forward, and how we move it forward and how it looks, it's us, not another committee. We don't need another, we're the elected representatives. We should be able to take care of ourselves. So that is my motion, is to move for the, whatever additions Aaron has.
All right, we got a motion. Is there a second?
Is there a written copy that I'm not aware of? Sorry, Aaron.
No, I can kind of review it.
Sure.
Okay.
I just wondered if I missed something.
So no, so what I saw as far as like the, basically kind of technical changes, section 37.3A, all officials amended to all appointed or appointive officials. Section 37.3A, strike should, insert shall. 37.3B, strike should, insert shall. 37.8, create a new subsection E, public hearings and other meetings of the Ethics Committee and Council under the Ethics Code shall be open to the public unless an exception is allowed under state law. And then section 37E, another new subsection F, and then it says the attached form and instructions may be used by complainants but is not required. A sworn complaint may be accepted in a form different than the attached form.
I'll second the motion.
Before
Was
we-
that second?
Before we vote, I'd like to hear what Sarah's motion was going to be.
Therefore, I move that the council authorize the appropriate city staff and city attorneys to develop recommendations for council, recommendations for our code of ethics ordinance for council approval that better address the structure for resolving ethics violations.
I wanted to comment on, Aaron, the last part that you read, creating a new subsection F about the form, because am I correct, we don't have a form right now?
Our policy says we do, and we don't.
We don't. And she provided several examples
Yes, she
from
did.
major
Yep.
cities. And so we would need to, if we pass or agree to that point, we'll need to have you or
Yep.
the city attorney create a form.
Correct.
And I think the point of that subsection F was that an individual could just write it on a piece of paper and sign their swearing to it. There is an impact to lessen the risk of frivolous complaints that people do need to swear that this is the truth as they know it, whether it's on a scrap of paper from home or the official form, and the option is still there for having it be notarized or not. Maybe not, just that it has to be signed.
I think that Geraldine had recommended either option. Actually, I think in the end, she decided that statement attesting to this being the, truth.
Yeah, that was adequate.
That was adequate, that the.
Does that have to be attested to a city official then, when it's turned in, or who signs off on that? Because the notary always,
Yeah.
it puts their signature on it.
I think that was a discussion we had when this first one came forward, that certainly the idea was we did not require it to be sworn in, that we thought by submitting it that was their sworn statement.
Correct, but what you would see if you adopt the motion would be an amendment to the ordinance that would come back before you with a copy of the form. that then you could take a look at and approve. And certainly if we want to require notary, if we want to require sworn attestation before the clerk or whomever, those are decisions that can be made when you review those documents.
Thank you. And are you saying then that just signing it, if there's a sentence that says, I swear that this is true, that is an attestation or a swearing to the document?
Yes, certainly it can be. The question is, what do you want to accomplish? Certainly with the form, we want to accomplish uniformity. But there's also a desire to make sure that we're not just promoting or encouraging complaints that are less than formal, right? I mean, we want complaints that are actually filed to
We
be
don't want
based on
complaints.
merit.
No.
Well, no, understood, but and I'm just talking about structure. If a complaint comes in, you want it to have some merit to it. You want somebody to put their name to it,
Right.
and to swear and attest that it is a valid complaint based on their personal experience.
Sure.
So
signing it on the line there, if they use the form, or if they created a piece of paper at home, let's say they don't have a printer or can't access the form, they don't want to come into City Hall to get a form, they could do it themselves, and their signature would be swearing that this is
Correct.
the truth.
that's correct.
Because that adds that weight of this is not a frivolous complaint, because there is penalty for false accusations. Am I correct or not?
No, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yep,
okay.
absolutely. So, I would add two things to the discussion. First, your ordinance is somewhat challenging because it applies not just to public officials, but also employees. Employees report to department heads report to Aaron. Aaron's the head of HR. And so I would encourage you in the future to think about whether it's really appropriate to have employees included in this ethics policy. Although there are a number of, sort of crossing concepts in this policy, which to Councilwoman Hall's comment, there is a section that relates to campaign finance, or campaign contributions and political activities that I think is rather well drafted, but it also reaffirms the right of your employees and your elected officials to freely express their views as citizens and cast votes subject to a number of different requirements and conditions. So, I think as you think about this, I think it makes sense to look at the changes that are recommended, but then also think into the future as to whether this ordinance should really just impact public officials, if it's really aimed at that piece of it, or whether it's something that should subject employees and regulate employees and their conduct as well, when you already have a personnel structure and system.
Does it also apply to people who serve on committees?
It
and
would,
boards?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Finance has always been the HR, which I believe is in our ordinance as
It is.
well.
Correct.
So that, I think, is germane to the conversation of keeping it where it's at, as far as employees are concerned.
I think our council, this council, is in a unique position. I mean, how many times have we had the rarity of something come up that we dealt with years and years ago? I don't remember the exact thing, but I remember something coming up like a few years ago, and Randy, you were talking about, oh, we did something and we didn't know. I mean, I think we have a unique position, or a unique opportunity here to voice what we went through as a council. Through that, I don't know if that's a diary or something that could advise future councils. I don't see that as a process change. I simply mean being able to voice what we went through and how we handled it and how we might do things differently or whatever.
We've got a motion and a second before us. Everybody understand the motion? Everybody good?
Yeah.
All right, all
Are
those
we
in favor of the
voting,
motion?
excuse me, Mr. Mayor, are we voting on
Yes.
what Aaron wrote? Because I know.
Yeah, and just,
So
yes,
just
so
make
Sarah
the
read
minor,
out her
those
We're
small
voting on the
changes.
Morissette motion.
Okay?
Yep, and I detailed that, and then that'll, like Nick said, it has to come back to the council anyways, because it's an ordinance update.
First
So
reading.
you'll see it come back as the actual ordinance itself once we update it. So you'll have another conversation with it.
All right, all those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed?
No?
No.
All right, motion's approved. Discussion possible action on diversity committee.
Thank you so much. I have heard from several community members who were inquiring on the status of our diversity committee. I understand we have had 10 people apply or have indicated their interest in serving, and I am hopeful that we will continue forward with this committee. Wondering where other council members are in the process of appointing someone to serve, and so I'm looking for an update from fellow council members where they're at and what our plans are for moving forward with this committee.
I've reached out to one of my gals, and I have not heard back from her.
You mean inviting somebody to apply?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I have 2 applicants.
Well, I would like to report that I have not received any applicants, but I have personally contacted several people that I thought might fit in, some of the categories, if you will, that were identified, and so far I have not been successful in I've invited several people to participate, and they have declined at this point. So I would certainly entertain applications. I was not on the council when the diversity committee was set up, and this is for later discussion. Probably I do have some concerns about it, but let's finish our go around of how we're doing on appointments.
Yeah, I received 2 applicants also, so. One I reached out to, the other one came to me by email.
So I'm wondering if we're at a, if it sounds like we have some that haven't had luck in getting folks, if we need to put out another call for people to apply.
Oh, for clarification, Sarah and I each have a person,
thank you.
our appointments continue, so we do not have the opportunity to appoint anybody right now.
Thank you, Joyce. Thank you.
And Randy's would have, but Randy's resigned.
Yes, and I think there were several people serving that might have been in my district now with the redistricting. That has changed a bit, but I understand that those individuals that weren't interested, or one person was moving, that couldn't or not able to continue serving.
Right.
So, yes, I definitely have put some time and energy into it and talking with some folks to see if someone would be willing to serve. And yes, if someone would like to contact me, District 3, the map's on the city website.
Okay. Rich, do you have an update?
Yeah, I've got 2 people that I have that have agreed to do this, and I have had a couple people contact me directly that are interested in it. I'm not so sure that I would be comfortable appointing them, given the nature of what supposedly the diversity committee is supposed to be doing, and those people fit a demographic that, in my opinion, do not represent the diverse groups that this committee is supposed to be working with. Instead, they are, well, quite frankly, they're white people that want to be proxies for some of the diverse groups that they have had connections with in their past. And in my conversations that I've had with a number of the people in the diverse groups in the city, that's something that they really don't think is representative of them. They would prefer not to have proxies, but at the same time, they had witnessed what had happened with the first couple meetings of the diversity committee and said that they really didn't want any part of having to deal with a lot of what appeared to be dysfunction in that committee, and perhaps because they didn't have a very good direction provided by the council as to what that committee was supposed to be, what it was supposed to do. I think that anybody that watched that, I think, you saw that I think in the first meeting, they wanted to have a department head director status, they wanted office space, they wanted staff. And I don't think that that was the intent of what we're doing. So, I think that we have gone out of our way over the last few months to put the message out that we are looking for people that would like to fill these positions from these diverse communities. And, we just haven't had the response. So I don't know what more we could do to do that. We keep hearing this, it comes up all the time. We need to get the message out. I can think of most recently the long-term plan, our comprehensive plan, where we were trying to get people to respond to the questionnaire, to log in. We had the questionnaires at the library, at the clerk's desk, at the city hall. We had them at the police station, I think. We had them online, and we just couldn't get people a number of people that would like to respond to things like that. It just seems to be, I think that it's not that we haven't reached out enough, and it's not that people aren't aware of some of the issues that we try to get them to weigh in on. I think it's just that they are not interested in participating. I think that's probably the answer.
I'd like to share the concerns that I have also about the committee. I do think starting up something fresh, new. I know there was a guideline or a sort of a mission statement, guideline and policy created by the council just about a year ago. And then it took a little while to get people in place on the committee. So certainly, people with talent and experience, both life experiences and work experience, were involved on the committee and have been. But it is a different responsibility when you're on a governmental body, which they are, even though it's an ad hoc or advisory committee. It's not one of our standing committees, but they still have the risk of open records requests and things like that. And I know they talked about that in their meetings several times. I know Aaron tried to coach the group about that, about being careful not to reply all to emails and things like that. It was a concern for me just that because of these are topics of great passion and interest for them, that they might tend to form friendships in subconsciously smaller groups which could communicate. And again, I wouldn't want someone who's coming forward just wanting to serve to maybe be subject to an unpleasant experience by having open records requests, which would involve their private, computers, phones, and so on, if they were communicating outside of the meeting. Or sort of the walking quorum effect. So that was a concern of mine. And then the other part, I guess this is our second time to talk about our HR structure here at the city. We do have an HR department, which is Aaron Reeves, assisted by Mike Johnson. And I think it was a great decision to have two people because they can bounce things off each other, because often there's a sensitive issue or different perspectives, way of looking at things. And so we have that in place. Aaron has served as city administrator for over 20 years, so lots of training. There's lots of in-place federal and state regulations about hiring and handling situations. So I was very concerned when I saw the committee start to go into the realm of, I think it was their February meeting, start talking about having an office where people could file complaints about housing in the city, perhaps complaining against a realtor, I don't know. There's a realtor association to complain against, about possible employment issues, even law enforcement. And of course, we have an independent Police and Fire Commission that handles that. So it just made me feel like they didn't have the right parameters. And again, maybe that was a startup committee is kind of struggling to find their way. But I was definitely concerned about that, and that would make me concerned about appointing someone to that, that they have that guidance. And because having the Office of Equity and Inclusion and putting the money towards that here, we all know how tight our budgets are, and that's going to take away from other funding, maybe someone else who needs an administrative assistant or something like that. I feel confident that our HR crew, both Aaron and Mike, can handle a lot of those issues in-house. So I don't really feel that it's the city of Hudson's responsibility to monitor what might be perceived infractions out in the community. Unfortunately, I mean, there are other things in place for that. So I thought that was a direction that I wish they had not gone, because I felt that that was overreaching a little bit what their responsibilities were. In other words, comments were made about all the staff would go through diversity and equity training, as would the city council, and we're going to root out sexism on the city council and things like that. But anyway, that's my comments. Thank you.
Anybody else? So that's the update, I guess. Sarah, where do you want to go?
Well, I guess I'm not really sure, so what I'm really hearing, I do want to respond to some of those concerns from Councilmember Knudsen. I do know when we proposed this and brought this forward, I did share concerns that this is such a big topic and such an important topic that I really thought we should have professionals to help us through this that are trained in this area to help navigate some of those uncharted territory. So I do share that opinion that I feel like it's such a big topic that really having a professional group that is trained in diversity, equity, and inclusion to help champion this and do it right would be the right approach to go. I know that we went a different direction at that time. I know I'll be disappointed and if this committee does not continue forward. And so I guess what I'm hearing from folks is you feel like you've done your part, you've reached out, and you don't have somebody to bring forward. And so is the decision that we're not going to actively try and find other folks to serve on this committee? Is that what I'm hearing? I guess I'd like, did I hear correctly, or did I misunderstand?
But what's happening is we're getting a pool of people that don't fit the demographic that I think really would explain or delve into our city about issues that me, you, him have no idea.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I've dealt with it with my biracial family. And for us not to have a diverse people on this committee is a travesty. And it is not what this committee should be. It should be of color, of whatever sexual orientation they want, and anything else I'm missing in there for people to be. It shouldn't be white people, if that's what you want to say.
Well, I think that there's more to diversity than just skin color, as you said, LGBTQ.
I'm including all that, Joyce.
Yes,
Yeah.
but there's also age and disabilities, things like that.
Absolutely.
And so it's important to keep that in mind when looking at that, but also religions as well.
But respectfully, we can't have this committee be a socialized, whatever, bunch of people because they have a passion for something. It has to be a committee that looks at it differently than we would.
Right. I agree with that.
And we're not doing that with the candidates we're getting.
What would you recommend for us so that we can
Maybe
move
we need
forward?
to go back to the drawing board. Start it over. Look at a bigger city's policy. But I'm not comfortable putting the same typical people on this committee that have no idea what these folks go through every day.
Agree.
The The school district went through this not long ago. They spent a significant amount of money on it. And I think I would suggest that we all take a look at that. Once again, I'm wondering if we're in an area right now where we're looking for a solution to a problem that may not exist. And I say that having had conversations with a number of folks in some of the diverse communities and just say, they think that Hudson is very welcoming. They haven't had bad experiences here. Some of them are brand new to the area, brand new to the country, and they love it here. Now, that's not to say that we don't have anecdotal situations where people feel that they've been mistreated by somebody. We're going to have, we're never going to do away with racism or bigotry in this society. It just doesn't happen. It's always going to be with us. But the question is has it risen to the level that we really need to address it right now? And I'm not sure that we're there. We had, probably 3, maybe 4 years ago when we had the gay pride flags stolen and burned, and there were some things that were directed toward the LGBT community. I don't want to say we addressed it. We certainly discussed it a lot. It was brought to the attention of the police department. And we made it very clear that this community doesn't tolerate that type of activity here. And I don't know that we've had anything of that sort to that level anyway that we experienced a few years ago that needed to be addressed. And so I think that maybe that's why we're not getting the response that we thought we'd be getting from these diverse communities, diverse cultures within our own community here in Hudson. So I don't know. I mean, it's up to you guys how you want to proceed. Either we fix it or we do away with it. That's the way I look at it.
Were you suggesting changing up the format of it, or just?
If I could interject just one more time here, Bill and Randy, before you answer that, Randy, if we're going to fix it and want a committee that is going to be drawing on our community members, we've already discovered that we're not getting the response that we thought we would.
I think we have a good structure in place, but I don't think it's addressing what truly needs, the different communities need to be heard about, if that makes sense. I think we just threw it together because a lot of emotion was going around at the time, and it was never really based on facts and what we were really trying to accomplish out of the emotional times that was happening.
Well, I think we need better direction for the committee.
Oh, yeah.
So that they have a better idea and understanding of what we're looking for. Part of my, well, first of all, in one of the discussions that I had with a resident, it was, we aren't the thought police. And, this isn't about telling people how they're supposed to think. It's are there ways that the city could improve city government in order to make it more welcoming for everyone? So, for example, we have very few, how diverse is our employee population? Can we make changes to make sure that we're attracting applicants from all areas? Are there some things in our statutes that are, we don't even realize are in there that are either, sexist or,
maybe unintentional barriers?
Yes, unintentional barriers, yes. How can we remove those? And that was where I was coming from. I don't know where everybody else was coming from.
You're solely talking city government And as a longtime businessman in Hudson, I can assure you, there's a lot of minority help workers in Hudson. So are you saying
No,
strictly city government?
City government employees.
So I can comment on those two, because, and honestly, also, I think the hard part too, as we talk about this, is I think this is what the issue that the committee had to start with, was they were clearly unsure of exactly what they were supposed to be sort of focusing on, whether it was actual city operations, or was it bigger picture cultural issues within the community, other organizations, things like that. So I think that caused some concerns, because the two items you brought up are honestly, I think, things not that a committee should be doing, because I don't think that they specialize, they would be able to focus on that. But so for the first one, for the hiring, so for example, we've been actively trying to address this. So our most recent hire was our fire chief. So we used one of the places that we used to help us advertise was a firm that we paid, that they do the advertising for us. They specialize in public safety and law enforcement, and they send and they focus advertisement for us to the various organizations that represent diverse communities in public safety. So we sent them our notices, and they in turn then send those out to these organizations that are specific to what we needed, which was a fire chief. But these are the organizations that are, I'm not sure exactly what they're called, but they represent the minorities within the fire service and with public safety and things. So we're starting to do that with all of our advertisements, is trying to use third parties that focus on these things to help us. We pay them for that service, but it's a way for us to get that out there. And then when you talk about potentially, I don't want to say implicit bias, but potentially some sort of bias within our ordinances and things, to me, that's not something that a committee should be reviewing. That should be, like, we should be paying a third party that specializes in doing that to review our codes and things, to see, do we have something in there that they would recommend that we change, and things like that. Because I don't see a committee going through our city ordinances necessarily in being able to identify it, as well as a company that specializes in those sort of things being able to do it. So I think with some of that, it can be handled by third parties versus us trying to ask a committee to try to take a look at those two examples. I'm not saying there may not be other things, but in those two, I think that would be better handled in a different way.
If I recall, when this all got started, there was a subcommittee that was Councilmember Alms, Councilmember Hall, and at that time, former Councilmember DeZiel. I'm wondering if it makes sense to go back to a subcommittee again to maybe try and hone this a little bit finer and see if we are going to move forward and try and continue with this with a clearer plan, if that might be our next action item. And then bring it back to the council at large for us to kind of have some folks kind of hash it out offline here and bring forward a suggestion.
What type of charge would you give that subcommittee? I guess that would be my question. Is it a mission? Is it
mission?
Okay.
Responsibilities.
Sure. So I remember meeting with like the former heads of that committee before both of them actually moved, right, out of the community. But, it seemed like there was this dance going back and forth. It's like, well, what does the council want? Well, what does the diversity committee want, right? So I guess that's what I would ask is as long as we have a clear, I would be amenable to that if we had a clear direction what the council is looking for that subcommittee to come back to the council with versus just having conversation.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it would be good to go back to the drawing board and make sure that we've gotten things a little bit more set up for the committee, reviewing the committee, what the committee has tried to do, and then making sure, or reviewing it and analyzing it and saying, all right, is this what we want the committee to do, or what direction do we really want them to go, so that they've got a clear direction.
Yeah, I personally, trying to appoint someone when they ask questions of What does it do? What are our responsibilities? If I can't answer that, because I can't answer that right now, I mean, none of us should be really appointing anyone because I think we all have different ideas of who the perfect candidate would be, if they exist or not. But here we're all kind of aiming different directions. So not only would maybe be a good idea, I think it's a necessary next step. Because I don't feel comfortable describing the current committee. I think we all have a different opinion of what their meaning is, what their goals are, even the individual members. So I think we do need to take one step back. Like Randy mentioned, times have changed a little bit for good and for bad, and maybe take a clearer look at this with a little bit more distance.
So do we have a motion?
I still don't know if we know what we're asking for.
All right, I tell you what, why don't we just hold this off until the next council meeting and let somebody try to formulate what they just heard into a motion, something that they can bring forward to the council. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It
Okay.
does.
Let's do it right and get it right if we're gonna do it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, moving on then. Discussion of possible action on moving the city to a city of the third class.
So as you see, we had the city attorney put together a memo of what that would mean. The city is eligible to move to a city of the third class, but we have to take affirmative action to do so. We just don't we don't automatically move just by hitting the population threshold. So I had the city attorney prepare the memo detailing what that would mean. Honestly, from the staff perspective, our main driver is that as we talk about the growth in the city, we're basically out of residential lots at this point in time. We're very limited on commercial lots as well. So what we're looking at is any future development is going to probably require some sort of annexation. And we, as you can see, we have a lot of rural subdivisions around the city that limit us to where we can go. So a big driver for us is that ability to extend our extraterritorial plat approval from 1.5 miles to 3 miles. It gives us a larger protection zone where we have the right to veto development that could negatively affect our future development, as a city. So that's our biggest driver behind it. But you can see there's also some other implications as well to it. Nothing, I think, that's that extreme, other than, probably if you're running for office, you may think differently than that from me. But so we just wanted to lay it out there to the council and see. But just with everything happening right now, I feel we are concerned that we will see more potential rural subdivisions and things coming in, just because of the growth that's continuing to occur, and it can't occur here anymore. And so we would like to make sure that we have some sort of control over that, to help with our future development.
Let's give us any more liquor license.
That's a different statute, but that's a population base that's automatic. So we don't have to worry about it with that.
Okay.
And we're not walking away from any benefits.
No. Nope. We get extra benefits. We don't lose anything.
Okay.
Well, I guess, like I said, if you're running for office, you lose a few benefits, but other than that.
You mentioned shared revenue was a decrease in that. I mean, we barely get any as it is, right?
Well, I think you mentioned that's population, not class.
On the shared revenue?
Only if we move up from second. I mean, we have to get real big to have that affect us. And we're not going to hit that.
Never say never.
Well, that's true.
That's right.
Is there a motion?
Well, you're asking us all, we can make more work for ourselves.
But we control our destiny more for growth. I want to keep pressure in that one.
So
Only if
in
you're
order to
running for mayor,
move,
Randy.
in order to move to a third-class city, it takes a mayoral proclamation and publication. And so I think what this item is intended for is simply direction to staff as to whether you'd like to move as recommended by the city administrator. And then at the next meeting, or one of the next meetings here, we would prepare the proclamation, have the mayor proclaim, have the council confirm. Not that it's necessary, but we do it just to ensure that everybody's on board. And then we would schedule for publication in order to make the change.
I think it's a smart decision because we do need room for expansion. We can think of more businesses. There's a chance to increase our tax base by some development further out, the sort of businesses that we might not want in the heart of town, but are a good fit for more on the edge. Of course, we do have to extend our services to them, but they do pay for that as part of the development. And frankly, the city of River Falls is getting real aggressive coming north. So if we don't take some action somewhat defensively, we may lose out on those opportunities. In 5 years, we may wish that we had. So for that reason, I am going to move that the staff move forward with the process of changing Hudson to a third-class city.
A second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion and possible action on mayor council replacement policy.
So as most of us know, we have not had great luck in filling vacancies on the council. And so as part of this, before, if we have to move into this again, I thought it would be good for us to have a new policy in place to be able to have some little better terms detailed about what this means. If you remember with the last time, not only were we not able to get to the 4 votes, but we also had question about, while technically legal, do we want to have a council member representing us that no longer lives in the city? Things like that. So I tried to address those issues here again. These are all recommendations. Feel free to change whatever you'd like to change. Nothing here is required. This is going to be just our city's internal policy for it. So I guess the biggest part of it, that the biggest items I would like to highlight is basically that if elected official moves out of their district, or in the mayor's case, the city, they're automatically off. There's no more of representation living, in a different location, those sort of things. The other part is that we set some timeframes in there. So if there's more than 9 months left, we'll hold a special election because, as we all know, even more and more so lately, elections are a lot of work. And so we'd like to hold, if it's more than 9 months, we'd like to hold the special election, but we do so during either the spring or fall elections at that same time. We would just add it to the ballot. Now, if it's less than that 9 months, we do the appointment. If it's less than 90 days, we just leave it open. So those were the time frames implemented in there. Now, the biggest change is that issue of we need to get 4 affirmative votes. Now, obviously, to do that, the way the policy is right now, you'd have to have 4 of the 5 sitting council members vote for it. Because obviously the person that's left cannot vote, or even if they're notified they're leaving, they cannot vote for their replacement. And so we've had that issue. So in a way to help address that, what I've said in this is that when this issue comes before the council, it takes 4 votes of the council and mayor. So the mayor would have a direct vote in this process. And one of the reasons behind that as well is as you look at this, the mayor is really the only one that represents the whole city, which includes each of the districts. So in sense, the mayor is then assisting in the appointment of a council person to represent a district that the mayor also represents. So those are the big changes from basically right now, which is we have no time frame, no anything like that right now. And the only real requirement we have right now is it takes 4 affirmative votes of the council members. And like I said, that means that we have 5 council members, so 4 of those 5 have to agree on a candidate. And as we've seen, I think the last few times, that's tough to get to, which is where I added the mayor to that process to help with getting to that 4 votes maybe easier.
I had a question on number 6, Aaron. City shall hold a special election to coincide with either the spring or fall election. Mm-hmm. So in an off year where we don't have a fall election,
it would have to be the spring election.
So, okay, so if someone left the city in the summer of
right
an odd year,
then at the next spring election.
It would be the next spring election.
That's what the intent was.
So then that would fall into the situation where it's
possible.
We could appoint somebody.
Right. It could then make it that the timing of it would mean that the person only would serve office for a certain amount of time, that sort of thing. So Right. You know,
They
the-
don't only serve until the
next
until
election.
the end of the term.
Right. That's all you'd serve towards the end of the term. So what we were trying to do was just keep from having more extra elections. That was
Okay.
the intent of it.
Becky.
Where does the requirement for 4 votes, is that a city statute? Is that a state statute?
City ordinance.
It's in our ordinance.
Could we change the ordinance to 3 votes instead?
Oh, 3 votes of council members? No, because doesn't, that would,
You
that required, but isn't that for all certain class of things?
You have a quirky ordinance that requires, see if I can remember this, because it's legal gymnastics to get back to it, but for certain votes, including appointments, it requires 4 votes of the entire council.
So if we changed it, it would have to apply to the ordinances, resolutions, and appointments.
And appointments, correct.
Because what our ordinance requires is a majority vote of all members of the council, not all sitting members, all members, so that's 6. In favor of any proposed ordinance, resolution, or appointment shall be necessary for passage, unless a larger number is required by statute. So that's where that comes into play. Now.
So your majority there is 4 out of 6.
Right, right. And then, but technically, the other part of ordinance says is if you have a tie, which is possible, the mayor then gets to vote to break that, but you can't have a tie in this situation because we only have 5 council members. Unless you have 2 council members that leave, and then you potentially could have that tie. But we can't get to the tie portion of it because you have only 5 council members voting, basically.
Yeah, so you need 4 out of 6, but you only have 5 voting, which means you need 4 out of 5.
Right.
Effectively to appoint.
Yep.
So it's what your ordinance says, it's what you've done for years, although it's challenging in the event where you need to appoint a new council member.
But could we change the ordinance so that appointments, when there's only 5 council members that can vote, that we could make a 3-person majority for that?
You could. It's within your
So
power.
that's a possibility that we could do as well. Okay. Because we've done it where we've had 4 votes to suspend the rules or change things. So like when we had coin flips for the council president.
Yeah.
I think
Do
that,
we want to make it lower threshold? I guess I'm following what you're saying, I don't know the desire to make it.
yeah, I understand that too. Yes, that's, we've got a tight balance here.
Right.
Because we haven't been able to get the 4 votes. And then we've left, like your seat
It
was
was open, yeah.
was open.
Yep.
And so we were without a person. That hindered the council. So, and we don't want to have a special election.
Right.
So in certain circumstances, then that would be a solution, a possible solution.
I don't know if it hindered the council. I don't know, 4 seems to work.
Right, but they didn't have, that district did not have representation for that time.
And you and I will agree to disagree on that because the mayor represents everybody in every district, so,
But the mayor has their own job, and I think that, and a council member has a different job.
I say we keep it to 4. That's my opinion. But otherwise, yeah, was there a motion to approve is that what you're looking for tonight?
Well, that's, if the council's happy with the policy, it would be great to have a motion to approve. If you want to see changes, you can make those now and approve. I just need to know.
Sorry. I had another question on the special election. Is this preventing future councils to hold a special election in an odd fall?
It's a policy. Policies can be amended.
Good point.
I think I'd like some time to absorb this, and I'd like to wait till the next council member meeting to make a recommendation.
Well, I'll move to approve it with the 4-member vote, as is.
I'll second.
Wait, hold on. So can I clarify, Randy, are you saying that you want to strike 4?
I want to keep 4.
So you're
votes.
suggesting that we approve this as is?
Yes.
He's moving approval.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. I wasn't sure. I didn't understand.
So the whole thing, all 8 points, as is.
And again, this is policy. If there's something in the future, we can change it.
Correct.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No?
No.
Motion's approved. Let's see. Confer with legal counsel regarding litigation. Oh, this is for closed session. Is there language for the actual closed session on this?
What's that? Yes.
Confer with legal counsel regarding litigation in which the city is likely to become involved related to Ern Murphy and Benjamin Dornsife notice of claim.
We missed that.
See that?
Normally in that it's, I read off pursuant to statute, whatever, but I didn't see it in there.
Move to go into closed session.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to go into closed session. Roll call.
Morissette,
Yes.
Alms,
Yes.
Knutson,
Yes.
Kennedy,
Yes.
Brooke,
Yes.
Hall.
Yes.
Motion's approved, going into closed session.
So Mayor,
Aaron,
just
do I-
hold on. We'll move into your office and you just stay on the Zoom.
Got it. All right. Can you hear me?
Yep, now we're back.
All right, so we're back in open session. Do we have a motion?
I'll move to deny the claim that presented to us by the insurance company.
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. I don't have anything.
Just to follow up
You know
from,
what? Wait a second. There is one thing I guess I would like to say. I don't know if you guys caught this today or not, but the town of Hudson today voted to withdraw from the joint library. The village of North Hudson will vote tomorrow on whether to withdraw from the joint library. It was rather interesting how the town did it. They were supposed to take it up tomorrow, but they had a special meeting set up for a workshop today anyway, and they decided to take it up today. Didn't allow any testimony from anybody that opposed it. It was a 3-1 vote. So it doesn't mean, they have to give us a 1-year notice. It would be effective January 1 of 2023.
24.
I'm sorry, 24?
Yep.
And so there's time yet. We're still waiting for some information coming in from the Department of Revenue. And Nick and Aaron are working on that. But I just thought I'd give you a heads up so that you were aware of it coming from me or us instead of social media, although it's probably out there right now.
Can we get an update and have Shelley here at our next meeting so that we can discuss this and figure out where we
Sure.
stand?
Yep, absolutely.
and the only other request was a follow-up from the gentleman on 9th Street. I know we had talked about the speeding issue, and I just want to make sure it's going to be in one of the upcoming meetings. I just wanted to follow up
I
on
think
that.
it's part of that toolbox we talked about,
Okay.
trying to address some of that. So I will bring it up again with Miraz and Dean and just see, kind of where we're at with that and everything, so.
Thank you.
And I wanted to take a moment for a point of personal privilege. Actually, it's to congratulate my council member here. Bill Alms is being awarded, he has been awarded, but the celebration is coming up soon from the St. Croix Economic Development Corporation, St. Croix EDC. He was awarded the small business, was it? No. Yeah, small business of the year, Alms Creative. So that was honoring him in 2021, and they're having a get-together to sort of celebrate. And so I just want to say hats off to you. Congratulations for your great business.
Appreciate
I
it.
know how hard it is to start from scratch and build up, and so it's wonderful to be recognized.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Bill.
Congratulations.
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you.
Move to
Anybody
adjourn.
else?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. We stand adjourned. Thanks, everybody.